Hi, this is Phil McCauley for Labour Business TV, and I'm delighted to welcome my guest today, Mr. Lawrence Kenwright, a great entrepreneurial socialist. Hey, Lawrence, welcome. How are you? And tell me, why are you an entrepreneurial socialist?
Well, if I just flip it round and use the socialist part first, I'm a son of a docker. We lived on invalidity benefits. We found it really, really tough growing up. And I'm an entrepreneur because I've created a business myself. And the whole view of this entrepreneurial business is about how do we give back.
Great. Well, tell us a bit more about how did you get going? What was your genesis moment going into your own business for the first time?
Well, I left school at 15 with no qualifications. I ended up shoveling Fuller's Earth, which is manure. I'd done that for 2 years, realised that maybe qualifications may be the way forward. I went to night school, got a couple, not many. And then decided at the tender age of 23 to go into business with no real knowledge, no real understanding of how it all worked. Made a couple of mistakes along the way and then settled into being a hotelier. I took on old listed derelict buildings that didn't make economic sense and took them on myself and gave them a new lease of life as a hotel. A new set of clothes, if you like. And I understood social media really, really well. And I understood the powers of that. And if you wanted to research these stories and push them out on these social platforms, there is far more interest and intrigue in these buildings than any Travelodge or Hilton.
Yeah. Now, how does that impact your attitude towards employment rights, treating people well? Because you have a great record in this area. Tell us a bit about that.
Well, I think one of the worst problems the hotel industry has is 0-hour contracts. And the 0-hour contract is something that we don't use, even though it makes our bottom line probably weaker than what it should be. But I put that down to lazy management on 0-hour contracts. And I think an awful lot of hotel managers want that flexibility to cover the mistakes that they've made, but actually turning around to a cleaner at the end of the week and saying, you haven't got your 16 hours, you've got 4. And they've still got to find the money to pay for the food bills and the rent is draconian. I think it's a horrendous way forward for society and a horrendous way forward for to employ. So that's the first thing we done when we came into the hotel sector, was to turn around to all of our staff and get rid of 0-hour contracts. But sadly, it's embedded within the industry and it needs to be taken away.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Now, you've had a lot of success putting together these businesses, but just in regard to the lockdown and the COVID period that we're going through now and coming to a different point now, how has that affected your business? What's been your experience of that and for your workers too?
Well, it starts off by saying, what business?
Yeah.
So we have gone from taking £700,000 a week to nothing now for the last 17 weeks. Our overhead's still the same. The Conservative government, who don't have anyone really that understands business and how it works, sitting there as a minister, there's maybe 1 or 2 out of all of them that have got a small amount of knowledge of business, have come up with these fantastic clickbait headlines of billions of pounds getting given into the industry, but none of them have ever found the way to me. I employ 1,000 people in total. I will not be employing 1,000 people when we come out of this because I literally can't afford to keep them all on board. I don't think the hotel sector is going to come back for at least 6 months. And we have to cut our cloth accordingly. And I fully understand that we have no help whatsoever from the government to date, apart from £150,000 loan, which went in about 5 minutes. So I think if you are a small mum and dad or you are a medium-sized business, I think what the government decided to do is sort of leave us out. And if you are a large business that maybe went to Cambridge or Oxford, the chief exec maybe did, then maybe you'd be looked after. So an awful lot of the larger companies got a huge amount of money, and a lot of the smaller, medium-sized companies didn't get very much at all.
So I agree with you, and there's been a lot of inequality in the way this bonanza has been handed out by the Tories. Let's talk about something else, because you've also got this remarkable track record in attacking homelessness directly in your home city of Liverpool, the place of your birth and your life. Tell us a little bit about that. How did you take the actions you did to help people out of your own pocket?
So I think I was like most people. I'd walk over those bodies every single day and think, well, they're drug abusers, so therefore, why should I give them my money? And in part, that's correct. And it wasn't until I went to a council meeting and I realised that there were only 20 registered homeless at the time, and there was no second night on the street. And this one night, it was -5, wind chill, it was -10. And I had a numerous amounts of building sites around the city. And we had this one site called Kingsway House. And Kingsway House, I opened the doors, and within 15 minutes, we had about 20 homeless people in there. Within 5 days, we had 85 homeless people sleeping there every single night. And we were feeding 150 a day. And I made the cardinal sin of speaking to each and every one of them and sort of creating a relationship with them. And you saw within seconds that these people hadn't slept in a bed in years. Some of them had maggots growing onto their legs. They all had ingrained dirt. And yes, many of them had addictions. And, you know, I will put that down to escapism more than anything else. And then we sort of fell into dangerous waters, really, because we'd run around someone else's garden that we weren't invited into. And that garden is a very well-funded, and certainly Liverpool, it's 11.7 million worth of funding. And we were in that garden saying that we don't need any money and we are just going to keep this open until the cold spell goes. Sadly, it didn't really work that way, and we ended up falling foul of the local press and of some local politicians. And we got forced to close in the end, but we didn't close until the March of that year. But we were due to close on the 20th of Feb, but we didn't because we had El Nino upon us, and in the wind chill, then it was -10. So we closed sometime after. I then turned out to the council and said, you know, if the situation doesn't get any better, and I do think with the addition of universal credits and the negativity that has on many people's lives, it did get worse. And we opened another site called Cotton Street, which has now been running for 2 years. Sadly, now I'm no longer involved with Cotton Street. But thankfully, a local businessman has helped fund that now. And the council have now jumped in and helped fund it also. But my name had to be totally eradicated from the name of the business altogether.
It's great what you did, and you should be thankful for that. Thinking about Liverpool as a city and as a region, and thinking as an entrepreneur, what needs to happen? What would your message be to the government in terms of support for Liverpool and its economic region? If you're in the cabinet right now, across from the Prime Minister, what would you be telling him? What's needed? What's your recipe for recovery?
Liverpool, if you just talk specifically about Liverpool, Liverpool is very much a tourist destination now. We don't really have a manufacturing base. We have an awful lot of small and medium-sized businesses, not very many large businesses here. So we will not be gaining the benefits of some of those bailouts that those large businesses have gained. And the small to medium-sized businesses that are here have in large been omitted from those grants and those loans. I think the government made a cardinal sin and a huge mistake. They used the same conduit they did in 2007/8, and they used the same banks that actually caused the issue in 2007/8 by doing quantitative ease, and the quantitative ease and went to the banks, and the banks didn't get the money out. And so it took quite a while for it to come back. Clearly, this issue is 10 times worse than that issue at that time, because this just isn't about property values decreasing, which they are. This is also about huge amounts of job losses, and they need to support those job losses. And I think the way the council have gone about it with this very wide brush, one issue sort of sorts out all, just will not work, because they do not have the individual knowledge of the individual sectors in order to ensure that when that money comes through, that conduit actually hits the nerve centre that needs to hit. And I think they've sorely missed. But, you know, oh, wow, they've got their fantastic clickbait headlines, so therefore everything's all okay.
Makes a lot of sense. And thinking about you and your future, and as you build back your businesses and reestablish yourself and make whatever adjustments you need to to become solidified and moving forward. Has it ever occurred to you to consider running for office? Would you consider being a member of parliament or a mayoral candidate should there be a vacancy at some point in the future? Does politics appeal to you as the next logical step?
I think if you take that, employment is the main conduit to pay for NHS, police force, MPs, if you like, everything, because it's all about taxation and employment. I think our politicians are too embedded in being re-elected rather than looking at what the actual issues are. And if you look at the UK now in general, we're no longer a manufacturing country. And I think we need to get back to that. And I think by having more businessmen come to the fore and being part of that decision-making process and understanding the trials and tribulations that business have to go through every single day in order for them to be successful, which, by the way, is like tap dancing on hot coals sometimes. It's really, really tough. But having someone that's behind that veneer, sitting alongside people who can make those decisions in order to hold them by the hand and say, no, that's not how it happens. This is how it actually works, I think is something that makes me want to go into politics. Because whether I've made mistakes or whether I've not made mistakes, I've absolutely learned and I understand and I care.
Yeah, this makes a lot of sense. Well, I can certainly see that as a potential future path for you. But finally, when we think about Liverpool as a city and we think about the young people in Liverpool, what would be your entrepreneurial message and advice for anyone who wanted to take the opportunity to start their own business now, and maybe they need to do that because they no longer have a job? What's the entrepreneurial advice from you?
So it's probably not very entrepreneurial, to be honest. I think running into this sector now is going to be really tough. I think the next 6 months is going to be the toughest. I think there's an awful lot of businesses now that make their money from the summer season. The summer season is gone. We're now running into September before it gets back to some form of normality. September, October, November aren't great months, trading months. December, you might get 2 weeks, and then into January, Feb, it's tough again, and then we're back into March, and then maybe we can start rebuilding. So please do not go into business now. Wait for a period of time. But also, I think for an awful lot of entrepreneur or would-be entrepreneurs, it would be pick the sector you want to go into, work within that sector for at least 5 years. You cannot learn a trade within 5 years, in less than a 5-year cycle. And then bring about a mentor. Get someone like me, get someone who's fallen over. Don't find a mentor that's never fallen over. You need to find a mentor that's fallen over, because that's where the real tricks of the trade are learned. And then grab hold of that mentor, keep holding them all the way through the process once you've got your 5-year learning curve under your belt. And then you can finally jump into a sector. The problem is an awful lot of entrepreneurs are very keen to jump in at a very early age. And I think the problem has been that an awful lot of these entrepreneurs have started at a too early an age, and they're being beaten up too early on, because this is a very, very tough sector. It's the hardest thing to go into, own your own business, raising funds, having staff, HMRC, all the issues that come at you every single day are probably too tough a terrain to be involved with such a fragile mind. You almost need to be fortified by failures in order to be successful. And I'm not saying you've got to have failures to be successful, but you need to know someone who's had failures to be successful.
Well, speaking of success, recently we've seen Keir Starmer take over the reins of the Labour Party after the Corbyn era coming to an end at the election. What's your assessment of his grasp of the economy, his view of things right now, and how he's doing from a Labour Party perspective, rebuilding the brand?
Well, I can't speak highly enough of Keir Starmer, because an awful lot of people are saying Labour Party are going to be out of power now for at least 10 years because of the old regime. But actually, you look at Keir Starmer now, you put him up on a head-to-head with Boris, and he wins in every single sector. You know, he is a very trusted, articulate, clever individual. And what's Boris? Oh, none of the other. So, you know, do you trust Boris or do you trust Keir? Keir wins hands down. And I can see Keir actually, and I know it's a huge ask, and I know it's from quite a poor place, but I can actually see him making those grounds. And I feel very strongly that Labour Party will come back, certainly pushing the Conservatives far more than what we ever thought, and possibly win. So I can't speak highly enough of Keir. I think it's an amazing thing what he's done.
Well, how can you fail with your support? Lawrence Kenwright, thank you very much for being my guest today, and good luck turning everything around in the next few months. Cheers for now.
Thank you very much. Thank you.